Hi everyone, this is NornRad89 here. Thank you for joining us, and we have a special guest today, Angel from the Voices from Mausoleum podcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a very awesome live stream that I'm excited for that I've been planning. We're going to talk found footage horror. So each of us are going to talk a few of our favorite films and also like our love for found footage and stuff like that. So Angel, would you like to introduce yourself to the people, talk a little bit about your channel and why you love found footage horror so much? We would love to hear that.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on your channel. You've been on mine a couple. We always have a really good time, so I'm super excited. And of course, you pick like
Yeah,
the one thing that I'm like the most prepared to talk about in horror. In case it wasn't like super obvious.
definitely.
Yeah, so my name is Angel. I run a channel called Voices from the Mausoleum. It's a horror YouTube channel. It's kind of pretty wide ranged. I have we do my co-host Steve and I do like a coffee crypt show that we do, which is like news, trending, trailer reactions. I have a found footage show that I do. I do interviews with different horror fans, authors, other content creators, other just love horror lovers in general. Where we talk influential horror, some movie reviews, and then I do like a monthly live where like the themes kind of change. And yeah, so it's pretty much anything horror. I've done some makeup effects, I've done some gaming, like it's a very wide range of things, all horror related. But yeah, so I think it's funny, like I was thinking about this earlier, like why found footage. And I think my answer is kind of is not as like deep as some people who have a love for this subgenre, like how they feel about it. So like a lot of people are like, oh man, I remember like going to see Blair Witch in theaters and it like changed my life. And they have like these really deep connections to either mostly the Blair Witch Project, right? Or like other found footage films or whatever. And I'm not quite like that. I came into found footage much later in my life. By the time I saw Blair Witch, it had been a decade since it had been out.
Wow.
So a lot of, I think if I had to pinpoint one of the things that interested me in found footage so much, it's because I kind of grew up watching like low budget sci-fi, cheesy horror stuff with my dad. And a lot of that's, very B film, and not a lot of money, not a lot of people that you recognize. And that's definitely something that I think you can lump into found footage. We have mainstream found footage, higher budget found footage, but for the most part, it's a really great place for like indie creators, new writers, new directors, new actors and actresses.
Definitely.
And it's always like I've always been super impressed with what some of these people can come up with for these budgets. Like, I've seen the budgets for found footage range from like $300 to like thousands of dollars, right? And even millions when you get into like the higher production ones. But
Right.
it's always just been impressive to me what someone is able to do creatively to create atmosphere, to make something seem scary, and then most importantly, like to make something feel real, which is, kind of like the thing with found footage is it's filmed the way that it's filmed to make you feel like it's more real, like some like our old tapes that we see of our childhood and some of that, and then now getting into newer technology. But I think a lot of it is I really love what it just does for, creators that don't get backed by, the big production companies, and what they're able to do that's often better, in my opinion, than the ones that do get the budgets. And so I've just always been impressed with that. And I just think it's some of the scariest, most effective films I have ever seen are found footage films. And these films, they linger, they get into my skin, they make me think about them days after I've seen them. And there just isn't a lot of other movies in other subgenres of horror that really do that. And then, of course, with found footage being a subgenre, it can be anything. It can be monsters, it can be
Yes.
people, it can be paranormal, it can be demonic possession, it can be literally anything. And it's like the sky's the limit, And so yeah, so it's a lot of different reasons, but it's just something that's always impressed me, and something that I've found that a lot of those films are just more scary and more realistic, and they last longer in my brain than some of the other stuff. So I've just been a fan of it for a really long time, and I'm always an advocate for more found footage.
That's a fantastic answer. Very beautiful. Yeah, found footage is definitely one that, for real, for me, it's one that I've never been big on. So that was mainly why I wanted to do this first episode because I knew you're such a lover of it. You know so much
Yeah.
more than I do, and it's something that I've already always known. Like I saw Blair Witch when it like probably like a couple years after it came out, so I was
Okay.
kind of in the know when it happened. But
Yeah.
it's never been a subgenre that I've grabbed onto. So over the last couple of years, it's one that's been growing on me. I've been, reaching
Yeah.
out, like I said, branching out and checking out, like you said, that there's vampire story ones, there's zombie story ones. So it
Mhm.
evolves. It's a subgenre that's always changing. And especially
It is.
since the new boom with 2012, like how VHS came out, it was kind of a new boom for found footage.
Yep.
And now we're getting a lot more that are coming out, like
Mhm.
you said, low budget, medium budgets, and higher budget type
Yep.
films. So it's a very exciting time to be a found footage horror fan for sure.
It is. Yeah, it's interesting too because it's come in like waves. So you had like the Blair
Yeah.
Witch Project and then nothing to like Paranormal Activity. And then, Paranormal Activity was like the last kind of major big one. And then there's been, we had Cloverfield, but that's not usually like the best standard for found footage, in my opinion. But then, like exactly like you said, though, we got the VHS movies or the first one, the first VHS. And then I would even say like newer, because now VHS is like now we're getting more of those, right? Which is great.
Yeah.
But Deadstream is another one. So I'm not a super big fan of like horror comedies. I'm not like, they're not my thing. But Deadstream, I feel like was another one that just like blew up found footage. Like after that came out, everybody was like, I need found footage Rex and I need to see like more found footage. And I'm like, where have y'all been? Like 20 years. So it's
It's
been
like,
really cool because even though I'm not a fan of the movie, it's done great things for the subgenre.
oh yeah, that's what's cool too, is like when you're such a lover of a certain subgenre, you can just appreciate what a certain film does for
Oh
that
yeah.
fan base because it feeds the fan base, it makes people happy, and it, like I said, it lets it grow, and more people
Yeah.
know about it. So that's always a fantastic thing.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
So, did you want to now start with your first film? Since you are the special guest, we'll start with your first film that you would like to
Yeah.
discuss.
Yeah. So I kind of went about my list when we talked about it originally as like not necessarily like my favorite of my favorites, although one of them or two of them you do know are big favorites of mine. But this
Yeah.
one I mostly picked because I think it's one that a lot of people miss. And it kind of flies under the radar, even though it was definitely a higher budget found footage film. But so my first one that I want to talk about was Apollo 18, which came out in like 2011. It's like a sci-fi horror about these three guys that go on this mission they're not allowed to talk about to the moon where they're supposed to collect samples and basically just report back, and a bunch of really strange things happen. But most of the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's, to me, when we're talking about found footage, it can sometimes be really hard, I think, for filmmakers to do something different. And I think that this is like really different because this is filmed, there's no hand cameras, right? There's no walking around. There's no, okay, why are they still holding the camera? Because the cameras are everywhere because they're on a ship or a whatever it's called, like they're in space and
Yeah.
they're supposed to be reporting back. So there's cameras all over the place. There's cameras, I think, in their helmets. There's cameras literally everywhere. And so we get these really cool, but kind of mixed media style shots of things. Like we get the cameras that are like kind of low quality because this is, this is not present day. And then we get the more clear stuff when we get the ones on their suits and stuff. And it's just a very varied across the board of like how they chose to film this. And it is, and there are other, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of other like sci-fi horror found footage, but there's not a bunch of really good ones. And I felt like this was like, I mean, I'm like terrified of the concept of space. I'm
Yeah.
claustrophobic. Like I totally believe in aliens, and it's one of like the scariest things to think about. And so like it just checked a lot of boxes for me, but I just thought it was a really unique and kind of like a bit of a hidden gem in my opinion, because I don't see a lot of people talking about this one. But it's just one that I rewatched recently to do an episode on, and I was like blown away with how much I still liked it even after all this time.
Oh yeah, that's what's fantastic. Is this was one that I've watched before, so it was
Yeah,
cool that you brought this one up. So this was my chance to give it a second watch, and it still lands for me. And I think this is one of those ones that, like you said, the sci-fi horror aspect. It's such a good, creepy, claustrophobic feeling, and
it is.
you're miles away, thousands of miles away from anyone else. The only
Mhm.
people that can help you are, like you said, these two people that went with you on the ship, and then when you lose contact with somebody, it's really scary. It's like a horrifying thing. And I think, like you said, the aspect of having the different cameras, and
Yeah.
they actually go a good way of being at a period piece. I love that it's a period
Yes.
piece, and they have they're competing with the Russians to go to space. It's during the space race time, when it was
Yep.
like who gets to the moon first,
Yep. Yeah.
exploration. So I like that aspect because I'm a sucker for period piece films. So that was really cool. And like you said, a very unique film that has
Yeah.
really good acting, and it's a small cast. They
Yeah.
knew what they were doing, and they just control the screen, and they keep you captivated, these three guys, throughout the entire film, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, and that's part of what makes things feel real is when you can buy into the story the people on screen are telling you. And like there are things when like I feel like I felt all the things that they were feeling as things kind of start to go like awry. Like there's, there's, and obviously without doing spoilers, there's some really like really intense things that happen, and their reactions just felt so genuine, so real. Like they're asking the right questions, they're saying the right things. Like that's what I would
Yeah.
say in that situation. I mean, you wouldn't catch me in space, but like if I were in space, those are the kind of things I would
Yeah.
say. And like so this one was, the budget for this was $5 million, and it
Oh,
made 29 million in the box office. So it had $24 million profit off of this film at the time that like found footage wasn't super big still. Like, I mean, 2011 is right before we started getting the VHS films. It was, obviously post Paranormal Activity, but it was just like to see that a found footage film that went to theaters like did that, I think is still pretty good. I mean, 5 million is a lot of money for a found footage, which is why it looks so good. It's money well spent. But
yeah.
yeah, it was very believable, very just very realistic. And the ending was like everything I would want in like a found footage movie ending. It was like perfect.
Yeah, that's what's cool is I like this one because it gave me enough to chew on, you know what I mean? That's usually my
Mm,
main problem why I don't return to found footage is because
sure.
I must confess, like, I'm such a sucker for beautiful cinematography, and found footage
Sure.
is known for not having the
It's not
greatest
that.
cinematography, but that's on purpose because it's the
Yeah.
style of the filming. But
Hmm.
this one, yeah, it's just one of those films that totally, yeah, like the second watch, it blew me away. I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a mainstay for me, like on the found footage watch list. If I was to make like a watch list, I'd be like, this is definitely one of those ones you got to check out.
Yeah, and it creeped up on my list too because again, I saw it when it first came out, but that was a long time ago. I didn't remember that much of it. And it actually like so of all the episodes I've done for found footage, like this was the only film I gave a 10 out of 10. This is the only one. And this
Oh, wow.
is yeah, like and it's because there's literally nothing wrong with it in my opinion. Like I can't think of a single thing that ruined something for me that I felt could have been done. I literally think it's a perfect found footage movie. And the only other film that's found footage that I've ever given that high score is The Blair Witch Project. And I just think that there's something about this whole like, mission to the moon and it being like this whole like government thing. And I don't know, like it's the only one I've given a 10 out of 10.
That's cool. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad that it was like such a fantastic rewatch for you and you loved
Yeah.
it so much.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Alrighty. So now on to my first pick and everything. So we're going to
Mhm.
talk about, we already kind of discussed it a little bit, VHS. We're
Yeah.
going back to 2012, and this is kind of the resurgence of found footage again. And VHS is an anthology horror film that has many cool, fun young directors that have come to this films and all the different films in the franchise. And
Mhm.
they get a chance to tell these short horror stories. And that's probably one reason why I really love it is because they're short and they're packaged very, tightly and neatly. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like almost like a episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's
Mhm.
like packaged very tight, real
Yeah.
quick watch, and I don't have to, commit too much to it because like I said, found
Yeah.
footage is something that I don't attention. It's like hard for me to stay with it sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think that's why I really enjoyed the VHS films. And like we've had great directors. There's David Bruckner on this one, Adam Wingard,
Mhm.
Ty West, like everybody who basically was on this first film went on to do so many other great films. They're like doing
After,
things
yeah.
like for real, like David Bruckner did Hellraiser. Then we have
Mhm.
Adam Wingard doing Godzilla films right now, Godzilla
Yep.
versus Kong. Ty
Yeah.
West doing so many great things with A24. So this was like the starting point for them of
Yeah.
like, oh, let's get our foot in the door and really show people what we can do with this kind of low budget,
Yeah.
low quality, actors that are just not very known very well, but they have these really cool, potent stories that we grab onto.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that that's well, I'm kind of a sucker for horror anthologies in general, like reading them, watching them, TV shows, movies. I'm so I love them so much because when you're talking about like me being like impressed with found footage and creativity, it's like even more impressive when they can tell these like really unsettling but fully developed stories in this very like short amount of time. Like what you were saying, it's like I don't know if I can't even tell like day-to-day stories, right? Like that, like I just ramble on until I eventually get to what I'm talking about. But these were like I saw VHS not long after it came out. Like it was still pretty new when I saw it. And they it's I've seen all of them, but the first one for me really just stuck the most because I mean, the opening for this one for VHS is like just you're not going to forget it. Like you're going to watch it and you're automatically in your head you're going, okay, well there's no way like the rest of this is going to be this good. Like there's no way. And then it's just like each story proves you wrong as you go through, and it was just such a mind-blowing experience as a found footage anthology. And of course it's got like the overlapping story, which is pretty neat.
Yes.
And there's some shots with that are like, ooh, and actually one of my favorite segments from the whole franchise is the last sequence in this one. And I can't remember the names of it, but the one with the haunted house.
Yeah,
The
where it
la
wraps
like
it up and everything's just kind of going crazy wild. Like
it goes
it's
nuts.
like a dead moment. It's wild.
So good. Yeah, I love this. And I'm excited that they're still doing them. Even though we got that weird lag between Viral and 94, I'm glad that they're like picking up some traction again.
Oh yeah. I hope this is something that continues, and this is a franchise that I would be down if they did like 10 or 12 movies. I would be
Agree.
returning to every time because there's
Keep watching.
they it's a franchise that blew the door open for we can do almost anything. Like we can touch everything. They could even do like a VHS just pure werewolf one where it's just
I,
werewolf short stories
I
like,
know. Yeah.
and people would go
Endless
see it
possibilities. Yeah.
for real.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to say too was that I love my favorite one was I believe Ty West did this one was the second honeymoon, and it's like the husband and wife, and they're filming
That's
each
a good
other on
one.
their honeymoon, traveling to like Arizona or something, and then oh man, that one was so unsettling. And then you see the shots of the person like watching them while they're sleeping and stuff, and you're just like who the hell is this? And then
I
you get the
know.
reveal. I don't want to spoil too much for people who haven't seen these films, but then when you get the reveal, the second honeymoon title kind of spoils it a little bit, but that one's a really good one.
Yeah, and that was one where they did a really good job of like getting you invested in the like dynamic of the couple because I already was like, I feel like the husband's a jerk. Like I feel like he just says some things where you just like you're on her like I
Yeah.
immediately like this poor woman, like he sucks. And then it's interesting because I am somebody that like when I watch, and this is anything, it doesn't matter if it's horror or not, but it's like if I can't be engaged with the characters, it's really difficult for me to care about what's going on. And especially to get my attention and to make me feel things for these characters as quickly as this did. That's super impressive from a writing standpoint because like that first conversation they have in the car about money and stuff, I was like, I don't like him. Like I was a little invested like really early on, and I think that one is I don't think there's a weak one in that one at all. The first VHS is a really really solid anthology.
Oh yeah, I would say definitely for sure. I think every single one of the like I have favorites in it, but every single one of the
Yeah.
stories, like you said, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, they were good. I like the VHS friend. I'm excited for 85. Are you excited for 85?
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I'm itching for it. I'm so eager.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope that 99 was a little too comedic for me. I know everybody's like, it was perfect. And I'm like, I'm so glad that you guys love it. But like, there were some
That's right.
things that would have been better if they weren't meant to be silly and funny. But so this looks like this is going to get a little bit more back to like the serious stuff. So I'm hoping that's the case. But yeah, I mean, I'll be watching it when it comes out. Like
For sure.
the night that it comes out, I'll be watching it. So I'm excited.
So now we did VHS. Would you like to talk about your second movie now?
Yeah, so my second one is I think I saw this for the first time this past year. It's like a relatively new watch for me, but it's the 2018 found footage film Savage Land. Savage Land is essentially there's this kind of small town off the border that there's this huge tragedy overnight and there's just this one lone survivor, and they use the pictures he took during the night of this catastrophe or whatever, to tell the story. And it's done kind of like a mockumentary style. So there's a lot of interviews, a lot of conversations, and very, I won't say none because of the ending, but very little actual clips of the things happening. But there's like two major things about this one that I think make it one that I want more people to see. One, I think that it is super relevant for our political climate. I think this covers a lot of like really interesting things. And some of these interviews with some of these people, you will find yourself hating them. Like you will find yourself watching them and going, you are such a piece of shit. Like you will get so, at least I was like that. I got so frustrated and I was like, who is this person? Like, where do they live? But the other thing, aside from that, it being kind of like a statement horror, is it literally is told through pictures. And it's, to me, it's so smart because, first of all, photos are way easier to manipulate and mess with and edit than video, as far as making them look effective, making it look scary, making it look a certain way. And so their ability to tell this story through pictures was like so eerie and compelling to me. I mean, there's some pictures that it shows that aren't just scary, they're heartbreaking. Like there's this one picture in particular, I won't say what it is for people who haven't seen it, but I like, I'm seeing it and my heart is like in a million pieces, and I'm like so emotionally invested in this story. And so it's super creative. It's very outside the box of like typical found footage stuff. I do typically like mockumentary stuff. I think mockumentary is another really great way to utilize found footage in a more like real sense of making it feel real. But yes, Savage Land was one. I watched it kind of on a whim. I'd heard about it, so I watched it. And I remember sitting up, like it was like a weekend night or something, and I was like, I'm gonna have to find something happy to watch. Like it was so heavy, and it just like lingered on me for like 2 hours before I could finally like calm down and like go to sleep. And I can count on maybe one hand how many movies have done that my entire life. Like it was just so overwhelmingly like creative in my opinion. And I think like it's just stuck with me. And I couldn't, after I watched, I literally could not stop talking about it. I talked about it with anyone that would listen. No one knew what I was going on about, but I loved it so much. And so, and I think it's also one that I feel like a lot of people haven't heard of. And so I just wanted to talk about that one because I thought, I want to get more people to see it because I think it's a really, really great film. Very creative, very unique take on found footage. And they're supposed to do a sequel, but it's kind of been a while. I don't know if they're going to, but I'm okay with that. I think one is good, but yeah, I know this one wasn't one that you were just like in love with though.
Yeah, this is one that actually got brought up on the live stream that we did when we were talking about the
Yeah.
Conjuring franchise and
Yeah.
stuff, and when you guys were talking about found footage films. And I
Yeah.
think I heard of this one and I saw the cover and seen it and everything, but I never clicked play or committed to watching it. And then
Yeah.
after we got brought up on the stream, I watched it. And yeah, this is one that I think it's just mockumentaries I'm not that big on
Sure.
because I wasn't big on Poughkeepsie tapes either.
Yeah.
I think that's just a style I'm not too big on.
Yeah.
So when I watched it, my favorite part of the film is when you're following the guy who's taking the camera crew through where he walks and where he hits the points throughout the day. When you're
Yeah.
following the character who's getting
Mhm.
interviewed and everything. So when he's taking the
Yeah.
camera crew through all the points and stuff like that, I thought that was fantastic. That
Yeah.
was probably my favorite part, and I think maybe if it was just that, I might have liked it more. But I
Sure.
understand why so many people love the interview stuff and the pictures, and the way you describe it is, like you said,
Yeah.
it's a very creative way, very unique way for sure. Because there's not too many
Yeah.
other found footage films I've seen like this that are that creative and using photography to tell the story.
Yeah, and you're definitely not the only one obviously that feels that way. I mean, the mockumentary thing is interesting because we kind of talk about like sometimes like Tom and I'll go on these rants about like what is or isn't found footage. And it's hard because like technically this is sort of found footage because they've got the pictures, but the pictures were like given to them. So there's like this weird line of like, are mockumentaries actually found footage? But to me they are,
Yeah,
because to me found footage is more about a style than just like this definitive thing. But like the other one that I really like that's done like this is Lake Mungo, which is also one that people really love and people also really do not love it. And it's just that style is just, yeah, it's just not going to work for everybody. And that's yeah, that's all good. I think that like the biggest strength for me and that made this, I really do think a lot of it is the underlying message and some of the things that are said that really
Yeah.
just kind of stuck with me. And then I like I there's that one picture in particular. I'm sure you probably can think of which one I'm talking about at the school,
Yes.
where you're just like, I think it's at the school where you're just like, oh no, like it hit so many. And you know what? If I had seen this back in 2018, well, I was a mom by then, but if I had seen it before then, before I was a mom, it might not have hit as hard and I might have felt very different about it. But like as a parent, there were some things about this that really made me like so sad and uncomfortable. And you know what? The other thing, this is like a small thing that I liked about it. The photographs kind of remind me of like the drawings for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. There's
Oh,
like
that's
some
true.
that are
Oh,
like
yeah,
kind of
that's
like
true.
blurry and like you know what I mean? Like,
And the
and
uses
I
of
think
like the
that's like,
black and the gray, it's kind of just a very like kind of shadow and no color,
yeah.
nothing like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of that. And I think that's probably part of it too, is because it was like a little nostalgic. I'm like, oh, this looks familiar and scary, and I think it really did. Like, I would be very surprised if the photography edits were not inspired by that, because that's definitely what it looked like to me. So
Yeah. And I definitely say this is definitely a memorable one. Like it's not one
yeah,
like I'm eager to return to, but at least it's
yeah.
it's not boring. Like I want to tell the people out there, this isn't a boring film. This is definitely a film like when you watch it, you're gonna remember it. Like Angel was saying, there's a lot to take away from this film besides just the horror aspect and it
Mhm.
being a found footage mockumentary film. There's other stuff to
Yeah.
digest and dissect from this film.
Yeah, and it's definitely one that I think it's not one you have to really look. I think it's all very it's pretty transparent what it's doing, just based off what some of those people say. I'm like, and the sad thing is, I mean, I've heard people say these things. It's not even that far fetched, but yeah. And then you like the main character that's trying to say, or that that is essentially innocent. We know as the viewers,
Yeah,
but they're trying to prove that like, oh, he's this and that, so he must be this bad person who did all these things. And so it's like first of all, it's illogical because there's how many people. I know it wasn't like a huge amount of people, but there was enough that like he just walked through. Nobody stopped him. No, like come on. But I
yeah,
think that like you just feel for him because we don't get a lot of clips with him talking and stuff. But I felt like the ones that we got were like really emotional, and I was just like, this poor guy. Like, I felt so bad. Like, I'm like, can I write him letters or something? I just felt so bad for him. I'm like, he needs a friend. It's not real, Angel, but it was one of those things where it made me
yeah.
feel like it was real. Like it was so I really liked that one. So
That's good. Yeah, when a film can do that and you care about the character, that's good. Definitely helps out.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, so now on to my second film we will discuss, and that's we're going to 2006 now with Alone with Her. So
Mm-hmm.
this film is a found footage film that where it stars Colin Hanks, who plays our main character, kind of our main character, Doug, and
Yeah,
there's another kind of coinciding main character named Amy. And it's a film where he kind of becomes obsessed with her. He starts
yeah.
stalking her, following her, and wants to become a part of her life. You know what I mean? It takes another level where it's not just like watching her anymore. He wants to be in part of her life and he wants to eventually be her lover, her boyfriend. That's his
Mm-hmm.
goal in the film. But we know that this is a very traumatic and traumatized type person. He's not a very safe type person. And what ensues is kind of wild. And this one for me stuck with me mainly because like I said, I wasn't a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of found footage, but this one just grabbed me. It had me,
Yeah.
and I think it's because Colin Hanks just does such a good job. Like he did a very good job as this character, Doug. He's creepy. You kind of at some points feel a little like sympathetic for him because you're like, oh well, what happened to him to make him this way?
Make him like
You know?
that.
Yeah, you're like it. I feel like he wasn't born like that. That something happened to him to kind of make him this way. And you're like, "Ah," but what he does to her and what happens and everything. I don't want to spoil anything either for this
Yeah.
one. I really want people to watch this one, but yeah, where this one goes, it's kind of a slow burn. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand why people might not like this one because there's not a lot of
Yeah.
horror out of the films that we've talked about so far. This is probably the one that has the least amount of horror
Mm-hmm.
moments in it, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's just the general concept is very horrifying. The concept itself of somebody becoming that obsessed with you and wanting to, do all these things to insert themselves into your life. That is very terrifying of itself. So, what are your feelings on this one?
Yeah, so as a female, this one is terrifying. I think it's scary because like it's that use of like kind of how he uses the things that he learns through the creepy things and
Yes.
then using that to like manipulate the situation to become friends, like you said, to like insert himself into the picture. And then like it's interesting because like she I think it's we get to a certain point where he's like pushing for more than friendship,
Yeah.
and there's some things inside of her that are like absolutely not, and then obviously there's some other things that happen that kind of make things kind of go really crazy, but it's one of those things where it's like it's another example of something that I don't feel is that far fetched. Like, I feel like with what we have access to, what we post, what we don't think about when we post things, like I posted for this is just like a small example, but like I posted, today that I'm going to be going to my first horror like event that I've been able to
Yeah.
go to since, especially since doing content. And my friend Tom's like, "Oh, where are you going?" And I was like, "I'm not going to put it on here." Like, I was like, I'm not comfortable putting on social media because my page, my Twitter and stuff is public. I'm not comfortable being like, I'm going to be here at this date and this time because like those things, like maybe not quite exactly step for step like this film, but those things happen in real life.
Yeah.
And there was some stuff that happened and with somebody recently in the horror community where it was like really unnerving. Like this person like found out someone was going to a con and they rushed to like get tickets so they could go, and they were like super like unsettling. The whole like you just have to be really careful, and I think that is ingrained in me as a woman to be like I have to be really careful about who I trust, who I let in my life, who I acknowledge, who I interact with, who I do content with, and so like this like really hits home in a different level of discomfort, even for me, even from the beginning. I do agree it's a bit slower, it takes a little while, but in most formulas for found footage, that is usually the case anyway, because it has to take time to build up what's going on so that when those really crazy moments happen, you're like in it, You're like, I've
Yeah.
been watching it, I'm like invested, I'm like engaged. I'm like, I know this is crazy and like I'm here for it. But like, yeah, it's a weird one. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this one either though. Like I
No,
think
yeah,
the
I
person in
never heard anyone talk about it.
yeah, I guess it's because this came out. What year did this come out? 2000.
2006.
Okay, so it is older. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
really
it came out kind of
surprised.
in that era. I think was Paranormal Activity sequels are coming around, and
Yep,
this was an indie film, and I believe it was an IFC film. So it was an IFC
gotcha.
independent production film. So I think it did
Okay,
the festival circuit and everything. So
that's
maybe
probably
only
why.
the niche horror community that actually goes to the festivals and goes to the those kind of things are probably the ones that actually saw it or reviewed it and stuff.
And talked about it. Yeah, because I actually intended to go back and revisit for our chat, and it's not. You can only watch it if you pay $10, which I'm not. So I don't even pay that for movies I love. It has nothing to do with the movie. I just,
Oh
you
no,
know,
it's okay. Yeah, I think the last time I watched it, this was I think a few years ago, but it was
yeah.
free at the time. It was on Tubi or Shutters or something. It
Oh,
was
dang, I
on one of
missed
them.
out on that. Yeah, because I haven't seen it in a really long time. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's interesting. And then yeah, I thought that yeah, this one's it's kind of a very different level of unsettling, very realistic, kind of like got to be careful who you let in your life. Like, and that's for everybody. That's not just women. That's for
yeah.
everybody. And
Oh
especially
yeah,
like if you
anybody.
have people you love, if you have a family, like you have to be really careful. And it's like one of those things that makes you like never want to leave your house or trust anyone ever again.
I know. That's why, like, I hear why people are. Was it agoraphobia? I understand why some people
Yeah.
have it because, like, you feel safe at home. Like, it feels like when you're in the comfort of your home, like nothing can hurt you or nothing can get to you. So I understand why people want to stay.
Yeah, I mean, what worst case scenario, you home alone it. You just get creative with some
Yeah.
traps and do what you need to do. Yeah. Yeah. No, this one is very unsettling. I'm really like, I'm gonna have to like circle back to some of the other folks I know that like really love found footage and be like, have you even seen this one? Because I'm really surprised that I'm not seeing more people. Because I like naturally I just know a lot of people that, or at least a few people that are like really into found footage that have seen
Yeah.
like the most obscure shit you've never even heard of. But I've never heard anybody bring this up. You're the first person probably ever. So that's
That's cool.
awesome
I'm
though.
glad. Maybe, yeah, maybe I'll be like the only one because that'll be fine. Like I said, I'll be a champion of this one because this one's
Yeah,
in my top three. Like when I did my found footage ranking last year for October, I ranked my top 10 found footage films, and that
yeah.
week was crazy because I digested like 35 found footage films in like 10 days. It was insane. Just so I can have like a plethora to choose from And yeah,
Yeah.
this one was one of them, and yeah, it was up there. I was like, "Oh man, this has to be in the top," because it like you said, it stuck with me. It's so unsettling, and then when
Mhm.
we get to the 3rd act and what happens, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's one of those ones, like you said, it sticks with you. It makes you think about it days after it, so that's why it's here on this list.
Yeah, no, it does. Were you over found footage by the time you got
Oh
this?
god. Yeah,
You're
that's one
like, "I
thing for
can never
sure.
see another found footage movie ever again."
I know it for real, and then, like, I got so upset because one day I did a like, me and my daughter were like, "Let's watch a movie," so I put all different subgenres in a hat because we couldn't choose a movie, so I put a bunch of different subgenres in a hat, and I was, like, shaking it, and I was like, "Alright, let's go, let's pick it out," and I picked it out, and I was like, "Oh, it's found footage," and I was like, "I just did this."
Oh, I get it. It's hard because, like, one of the things that I think in general about being a content creator, and at least, like, I don't know if you feel differently because you cover all kinds of stuff, not just horror.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like, sometimes that burnout on it is real because and then there's like, so I did a found footage month a couple years ago, like right when my channel was like a baby channel, like brand new, like I couldn't get anybody to do videos with me yet, like that kind of like, and it was like one of those things where it was like, I want to do a found footage month and watch a different found footage movie from an agreed upon list for one every day of the month. And at the end of the month, I wanted to do my one of my first lives that I ever did found footage live, which is actually how I met Tom, my co-host for Found Footage Fridays. And I, God, at the end of that month, I was like, I found some really good stuff. I found like, that's when I saw Afflicted. I saw, God, there's some other stuff that I can't remember, but I found a lot of really cool. Yeah, love Afflicted. Afflicted is such a good one. And but I'm telling you, I was like, oh my God. And then like Tom and I went through a series where I felt like every movie, every found footage movie we picked sucked. And I was like, if I don't get a good one, I'm giving up on found footage. Like I'm so burnt out on watching something that doesn't end up being a good experience. Like I'm all
Yeah,
for being respectful about film. It's all subjective. I'm good with all of that. Not everybody's gonna like everything, but there were
that's
so
true.
many bad ones. I literally messaged him and I was like, "Can we please do one that we know we love? I need a positive video because like I'm so tired of getting on and being like, well, I guess I give it a 2." Like it's so
Yeah.
hard. It's like, oh, so I was just curious if like you got to the end of it and you were like, enough.
Yeah, definitely. I was like, I felt like I didn't have to watch anymore for a really long time and stuff. And yeah, gracious enough, my daughter let me switch the little pick that we had from the hat that night. She's like, we don't have to. Like she was all we could switch.
That's
I
very
had
sweet
one
of
in
her.
idea. I was gonna
She
show
didn't
her
want
Lake
you to
Mongo.
suffer.
Yeah, I had one in mind. I was gonna show her Lake Mongo, but then she was like, no, we can pick a different one. Pick a different
Aw,
subject.
that's very
But
nice of
oh
her.
no. Let's see. Now we're on to was your next one, right?
Yeah, yes. What did we just talk
Yes.
about? Alone with Her.
Yeah, we just talked about Alone with Her, so now we're on to your
My
third
last
film.
one. Okay.
Yes.
Oh God, if anybody that watches this has seen any episode or ever seen any tweet from me, this is inevitable. Like, so my one that has to make it and is in my top 3 found footage movies of all time. Or my top 5 found footage movies of all time is the 2017 found footage movie The Monster Project. The Monster Project is a found footage movie about content creating. So there's these 2 guys that are friends. They make YouTube channel videos and they're fake encounters. So they fake monsters and they fake things for views and they post them.
Yeah.
And so the main guy, Devin, is like, oh, I've got this really great idea. We'll put out a Craigslist ad. Like I can't even believe like that's such a scare. Like Craigslist, I feel like is not safe, but I guess it's 2 guys. They can handle it, I guess. But they put out a Craigslist ad and they tell people if you're a real monster, basically, if you suffer from lycanthropy, if you're a vampire, if you suffer from possession, reach out to us if you want to be a part of our film or documentary, whatever they call it. And so they get some responses. And the 3 things that they get, and this isn't a spoiler because it's on the cover of the film,
Yeah.
is they get a demonic possession. So a girl that is possessed by a demon, a vampire, and a skinwalker. And this one was one where I love the concept. I love so my second favorite subgenre of horror is creature features. I love stuff with monsters. Good, bad, doesn't matter. Love them. And so I was like, oh, I'm in. And I love that they did Skinwalker instead of werewolf, because the lore associated with Skinwalker is completely different from werewolf. So I thought that was really cool. But it's a little cheesy at first. There's some overacting by a very specific character. But I felt like once this film, you know exactly which one, don't you? You're like, yep, no, who it is. It's rough. He gets better, but it takes some time. But by the time things really get going, I found myself just like immersed in this project. Like I was helping, like I was a part of it. And I just loved this isn't a perfect found footage movie for me. It's definitely got some things that could have been done better, especially with the acting, but even some of the original setup stuff. But the way that this is shot and the way that these monsters and stuff look, now they do use some special effects to cover, some certain things, especially with the demon, but majority of it is practical effects. And the cast for this, specifically the woman that they cast as Shayla the vampire, was like literally born for that role. Like she was a dream. And so, yeah, I think it's such a really cool, because this, YouTube has been around for a while. YouTube is not super new anymore. But 2017 is really when people started to really amp up like making money on YouTube. You started seeing people that could like quit their jobs and like just do YouTube, and that was becoming a more common thing. And so it was really cool to see a found footage movie go in a different take on the footage itself, going from just randomly, oh, I'm just going to go into this haunted place because I want to like, no, there's like a structure, there's a project, there's another reason that they're doing all of these, or that all these things happen. And then to make it monsters in this old like dilapidated house that's like falling apart. I just, man, and I felt like all the characters, the ones that I think we're meant to care about, we do. So like we get really invested in like Brian, who's a recovering addict. We get, we really aren't like sure how we feel about Devin for most of the movie, because he seems like he's kind of a jerk. But Muriel, like I loved her character. I don't know, like it was one of those movies that I watched. This was another one I just watched on a whim. The cover looked good. You know how I feel about green and black. I was like, I'm here for it. And it's found footage and it's monsters, so sign me up. And I rented it on Amazon. And when the movie was over, I bought the digital, and cause I'm not super into physical media, but I bought the digital. And so now I can just watch it whenever I want. And I revisit it at least twice a month. It's one of my favorite like go-to comfort horror movies now. I love it.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
that's my tangent on the monster project.
That's perfect. That was great, for real. So this was the one on your list that was the first time watch for me. This was the first time watch for me on the list. And man, like you said, for me, the first 10 minutes were a little rough. I was like, to get into it, like just like said, the setup and like I was just like, all right, kind of where are we going? The characters were a bit of a drag, but then once we started to get into everything and it started rolling, I think what I loved about it was like, not besides because we do YouTube and stuff, but I was like, this is something I can see like me and my goofy like horror friends doing. Like this is like an idea I can see, like, yo, let's find out if there really are monsters out there and just ask them, interview them. Like, would they do that? Like, I feel like this is something that you and your friends would get together and do. So that's why it was really something, like you said, you could grab onto. It's easy to get latched onto it. And the characters do end up becoming fun and relatable. And the third act is just an absolute blast. Like once things start to take off, it takes off. And like you said, it's so fun. Like it's for real. One of the best, I would say, out of the films we've been talking about so far, probably my favorite third act of the movies that we've seen so far. This one is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, some of the shots, I'm so partial to the Skinwalker design. Like I love him so much. I love the way he looks so much. And there are these there's these clips, like the one where he's like his snout is like between the door, and that really beautiful one when they're like outside and he's like up on the whatever it is he's standing on. Like this is like, for this to be technically a smaller budget found footage film, and for it to have started out kind of as cheesy as it did, I could not believe how good it got. Like I was not prepared. It's one of those where you're like watching like you get to the credits and you're like, like, you're kind of like, okay, that was really good.
happens. Yeah, I like that a lot better than like starting off strong and like ending bad. You know what I mean? Because then
Agreed.
it just, yeah, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth. So when a film's able to like, be like, all right, no, we're gonna be something else, and then they end on a good note, it's like that's better.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you liked this one. It would have obviously been okay if you didn't. I wouldn't be a friend anymore. But it's one of those things where it's like I am glad because I genuinely like so far. Because I'm honest, when I recommend it, I'm like, it's gonna take a little bit. May have to be a little patient with it, but it does have some really great payoff. But I don't think I've recommended this to anyone who's watched it and ended up absolutely hating it. And then you go look at the reviews and people are like, this is awful. And I'm like, no, yeah, I think you're just incorrect. Like, I feel like this is
Yeah.
such a great, like, and then we covered it on a podcast episode before I decided that that was not a super great use of my time. And so, and I guess when we posted about it or something, one of the people I had as a guest, like shared it. And then the guy that plays Brian, like reached out to him and was like, so glad that you guys love this movie. It was so difficult to film. There were so many things that went wrong on set. It was a really, really challenging way to film because
Wow.
I think he said it was his first found footage movie that he had been a part of. So it's done completely different than the other shooting style. Like it's completely different. And so he
Yeah.
talked about that and just like how like some of the shots, and he went into like really specifics about like, this specific shot had to be redone a bunch because it was so difficult to get. And it's just like, and to know that it's like so much went into this to make it look the way that it ended up looking. It's so good. It's like I never stopped talking about this movie. I think I literally quote tweeted something today with this movie because I have one of the Skinwalker gifts is just saved on my phone because I use it so much. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this film.
Oh yeah, this one was, yeah, an absolute blast. I had a lot of fun, and this is the one that I can't wait to actually like show like the kids and stuff because my daughters
Yeah.
are like, they're like she's so into found footage now, and then like they're just into horror where
Love
they're
it.
discovering it. So
Yeah.
shark films, The Conjuring, found footage, that's kind of more their realm. Like the slasher thing, that's okay, but I got my son for that since he's being Leatherface for
He's being
Halloween.
Leatherface.
We talked about that. Yeah, he's being Leatherface for Halloween, so I got a
Love
slasher
it.
lover to go up with that right there, so that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, and found footage is like it really to me, if people don't like the way, like the style of it, I can get that. It can be a little jarring. Some of the more lower budget or some of the older stuff is really like all over the place. We've
Oh
gotten a
yeah,
little
that's
bit
really
better, you know, with our equipment and we're using different types of technology and drones and like all kinds of stuff, computer, cameras and all kinds of different things now. But it's just what I feel like it's another thing I think I love about it is there's like it's so full of variety. Like there's literally so many things. Like it's like for example, if your daughter likes shark movies too, there's a shark found footage film and it is fantastic. It is so
nice.
scary. It is so well done. It involves night vision in the ocean. Absolutely not. It's so good. There's dinosaur found footage. There's mad scientist found footage. Like I mean, there's just so much to break into and find. And I'm finding stuff that like has been around for a really long time. I've never even heard of. And I'm just like randomly like finding stuff from like 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. Like it's just this
Yeah.
endless abyss of films, and it's cool to have something that just has variety. It has so many different things.
Yeah, that's one thing I could say for sure. I must confess, like slasher is my favorite subgenre, but
Yeah,
there are a lot of cookie cutter kind of copycat ones that,
I mean,
especially
sure,
like in the 80s, yeah, where it's I've seen that done before. So like
right.
they don't stick out as much, but it's just, yeah, like you said, there's always those certain ones in every subgenre that are like, all right, they spark a new thing or they revitalize
Mhm.
that subgenre because they start something else, like Scream that kind of revitalized
Sure,
slasher
starts
because they
it.
were
Yeah,
dead for years.
new life. Yeah, yeah. And have you seen the found footage movie? The Unmasked, the story, the rise of Leslie
Oh, The
Vernon.
Rise of Leslie Vernon? I have
Right,
not
the
seen
rise
that
of.
one. I've heard that is right up my alley because
That's
I heard it's a horror
yeah,
comedy and it's a slasher, so
and
I
it's a
heard it's right
slasher.
up my
Yeah.
alley.
Yeah, it's got Robert England in it, and, the
Right.
woman who played, Tangina in Poltergeist is in it as well.
Oh, really? Sweet.
It's got some really fun, cameos for sure. It's a slasher, so, that's why I was asking. I was wondering if you had seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that is definitely on my list. That's gonna be probably on my list on October, like in the 31
Yeah.
days. I'm gonna have to for sure get that one in there this month when it comes up.
Yes. Yeah. Are you gonna do like a different movie every day, or what are you doing for October?
Well, October for me watching personally, I'll probably watch at least one movie every day. Like especially when I work graveyards too, I can have a movie on. Like
Sure.
because like when things are slow at work and
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people coming in, I'll have a
Yeah.
movie on the phone. So I'll be like watching new movies like that.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I wanted to also drop a on October 1st, I'm gonna drop a 31 films list and like my pick of 31 films everybody should kind of watch through the
Oh, I
spooky
love that.
season.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm also gonna watch 31 new films. Yeah, definitely, probably.
I'm gonna go through probably sometime this week and go through all the streaming services and write down what they've got coming up, because I would
Yeah,
like to do what I haven't seen, because it's very the list of things I haven't seen is very long. There's so I mean, even like class. I mean, you know this. I've only seen two Jason movies, I think, my whole life. So like
I
there's
you definitely have to look. You
and
have
I
to.
yeah. I know. I will. I'll get to that one because I just did Nightmare on Elm Street because I had only seen two or three of those as well. So there's a lot of like older stuff and even some like really big mainstream stuff that's been, in the last decade that I just haven't seen. So I'm hoping that there'll be some good stuff to pick from, and I'll probably do hopefully a movie a day. But the goal is to make them all things I haven't seen before.
Hell yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to venture out. And like for me, this is my favorite time to watch horror films at all. Like even
Sure.
at this time in September, you can feel that fall, like air, the pumpkin spice is going. So it's
I
like you
know.
can just feel
Everybody's like
it.
geeked up and ready for the season.
So now we
Mhm.
did that was your last one. So now we're on to my last film right
Yep.
now. So
Yep.
we're gonna talk about I believe this is the most recent film that we've talked about, 2020, and this is Spree with
Yep.
Joe Keery, starring Joe Keery, and this was a Hulu exclusive, I believe. So this didn't
Mhm.
get a theatrical release. I
No.
don't think this
Yeah.
went straight to streaming because
Yeah.
this was kind of during the whole COVID thing and all that kind of stuff. So this one for me just hit hard because one of my kind of nitpicky things I have with found footage is when we have editing or we have music that kind of comes out of nowhere sometimes. And especially when it's like, oh, okay, I thought this was supposed to be just like them holding the camera, one camera. But I love the fact that this one explains it where
Mhm.
it's like, no, it's the people who were fans of Kurt Kunkel, his character, who, if we don't know, let's explain the story that
Yeah.
Joe Keery plays Kurt Kunkel, who is a rideshare guy who does YouTube videos as well, but he wants to gain a really big following. He wants to blow up. And he decides to hatch a crazy plan and start, drugging people in his ride share and going crazy. And this is kind of in the trailer, so I'm not really spoiling too much. And goes on this, night that is to be remembered and it's going to be filmed for sure. So it's kind of cool that this one, I like that all the fans of him, they edit the video and they find all the footage. So it kind of gives you a reason to have all the jump cuts, all of the
Yeah.
music or the different
It makes
things.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like an explanation for that. And the fact that he drives the ride share. So when we have music, he's playing it through his car. You know what I mean? He's changing the track,
Mhm.
so we actually have a soundtrack to this film too. So and it's a horror comedy. So that also leans into my realm too. Is like I actually found this to be a lot funnier than I probably should have. Like for a lot of the moments, I was
Fair enough.
completely laughing because I think Joe Keery just his character as
He
Kurt
sells it.
Kunkel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
damn, like I need him in more horror films. After I watched it, I was like, I need because we know he does was a
Stranger Things.
Thing.
He's Steve.
He's
Mhm.
Steve Harrington, yeah. So it's like I
Mhm.
need him in more other horror stuff because he's really that good.
Yeah, I actually got quizzed on found footage, and that was like my second or third question, and it was, which found footage movie is about the whatever of this guy, and I was like, I don't know what that is. And they
Oh
were like,
no.
this is after
Oh,
I had
no.
been talking nonstop about my 30 days of found footage. You're like, didn't you just do 30 days? I'm like, yeah, but it was older stuff. I haven't so anyway, so I made a point to go watch it like a month later. And so I saw it like probably like a year after it had been out already. Because I think by that point I rented it. I had to rent it, which was fine. It was I really liked it. The kind of like more real worldy kind of found footage just hits a little different sometimes. Like at a time when like everybody Ubers or Lyfts or whatever, and you just like you don't know really what you're getting yourself into. And there's been, you know, obviously issues and things that have come up and they're getting sued or there's all kinds of stuff going on. But it's like the way he sets this up is like it's just so believable, and it was just very wild. And I think I probably laughed a lot too. I was like, there were some oh my god moments, like the sunroof. There's some moments where I was just
Yeah,
like,
that was one for
oh,
sure. That's the one that got me. I was like, yeah,
yeah,
this
where you're
one
like,
was just like I said,
yeah,
it's so many moments that just had me like where I didn't expect to laugh, but it was something that happened so suddenly, or the way it was, filmed or shot, or his reaction just sold it.
yeah, he did a great job. And it's so different than what we see him like in Stranger Things, which is the only other thing I know him that I know of him from.
Yeah,
And he's like completely different. So it was very it was one that it took me once he started like his little setup and his like feud with that random person, that other YouTuber
yeah,
or whatever it is. That like that kind of stuff was like took me a little bit, but it's same as like what you were saying earlier. I'd rather it take time to like get into it and it be like really crazy and great at the end versus the other way around. And this one I think is another one that had like a really great payoff. Like you kind of sit through and you're like, okay, yeah, like I get it. But then you get to the and you're like, oh, okay, like this is really good. Like I really like that one a lot. And I agree. I definitely laughed in parts I probably wasn't supposed to.
oh yeah, for sure. And this one is one like, yeah, I really don't want to spoil this one either. But when you get to the third act, it's very like almost like serendipitous, like climactic. The way he goes out is just like it's like the
Crazy.
perfect ending with the
Yeah.
meaning of what the whole film was about, which this film has a lot to do about, being involved in YouTube and social networking and, gaining a
Mhm.
following and being obsessed with that kind of
The
thing, which is
pressures.
something that
Yeah.
happens to a lot of people. Yeah, we know that. So this is one that has spoke to the times. It's very much a film of the times it came out.
Yeah, yeah, and I've only watched it the one time. I don't like I tend to watch the more like supernatural, like not so real life stuff more than the other, but I think this is one that I probably would enjoy just as much if I watched it a second time as I did the first time because I watched it by myself, like just kind of I was like, oh, I need to finally watch this, and we were at the beach or something. I was like, I'm gonna watch it because it's late. And I really liked it. I think it's interesting because like some of my favorites that I found randomly are content-based ones because it's like you
Yeah.
said, like we see what people will do, the things that people will say, how they'll treat other human beings, like the links people will go to, just for likes, just for comments, for interaction, for engagement. And then there's like the normal of us, right? That are just like, oh, I just want to hang out with people and talk about stuff. It's not really like, I mean, if it changes my life in a good way, that's great. But like, I'm going to continue to do this regardless. Like, and it's seeing it, but I mean, we've seen it happen. We've got like really crazy stuff where what is that guy that did like the house with like all the guys that lived in it? John, no, Paul, something Paul.
Oh,
Paul
Logan Paul or John, one of the
Logan,
Pauls.
that's it. So he like went to that forest, the suicide forest, and like like just I mean, people just do like really obscure things for like content purposes and they're disrespectful and they so it's like so this isn't again, this is another one. It didn't feel that far-fetched. I was like, I can see this being like a real thing. It's wild because you get to correct me if I'm wrong, you get to see the chat and stuff too, right? Don't you see things
Yeah, you
sometimes
get
on
to
the
see like
screen? Okay,
yeah, you get to see how many people are like there, and he's reacting, and like you
that's
said,
right.
he's
Okay, yeah.
communicating with another YouTuber like that's
Mhm.
messaging him too, who's watching his videos, who's like one of his biggest supporters and stuff like that.
I love that. I think it's great. And his
Yeah,
reaction to those things felt like so genuine. And the more positive things, it's like, oh, that does feel good when like you reach a certain thing or you have people come on and interact or so like you're almost like nervous of the fact that you can like kind of relate to the good feelings that he has when those moments come up.
yeah.
Like, I don't know that I'd
I
go that far, but
Oh yeah, and that's maybe one thing is like I've noticed with found footage is like, I do love the supernatural stuff, but I think I do like probably the more realistic found footage. I've noticed
I can
more. A
see
lot of
that.
the stuff that was high up on my top 10 list was more stuff that was, yeah, like you said, stuff that could really happen. And you're like, oh, I can hear someone telling me a story about this. And I think even Joe Keery did an interview for this about this on YouTube or something. I saw he did an interview and he said he based this character off somebody. There was a character, like a real person that he looked up and he did research on, that he based the Kurt Kunkel character off of. So I was like, I heard that too. So I was like, oh, that was very exciting that he put in this effort to this character. And I think it shows on screen when you watch him on screen. You know, he definitely created a certain type of
Mhm.
character.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, well, and I think it poses an interesting question too, because like we're talking about, like we've seen people and what they're willing to do. It's like kind of shedding light on something that we don't really address as often as we probably should, but it's like people really want their stuff to be successful. I mean, we all do. We all want our
Yeah.
stuff to reach people. We all want to meet new people. We all want engagement. We all want like everybody watching our stuff, but it's like when he starts out and he like doesn't, he's not doing well, and it's like I don't know, I felt like his range of emotions was just so relatable. Like
Yes.
it was so relatable, and it's like how many people who do this, who put in the time and the effort and the energy, have to go through those same feelings of like, oh, like is it ever going to be, good enough for more people to like? Is it me? Is it like all these things, and wanting just something more from it, and it based like him basically like basing his entire life around it. That's all it mattered. At least that's how he
Yeah.
portrays it. Like that's it. Like he had nothing else. He didn't have a family. I mean, he's younger, so like, but he don't even know. I don't even think he had like a girlfriend. Like he just was like,
No.
this was it. This was all he had. And it's such a, like a really sad reality, I think. And it just kind of puts light on those things that in content creating, we don't really spend a ton of time talking about, because, we're all just trying to like do things that we enjoy doing and whatever. But it's like a kind of like the darker side of content creating, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something like that. Like even with anything that, any job
Mhm.
or anything that being an actor,
Mhm.
wrestling, or doing content creating, there's always that dark side or something else, under the toe. But it's like you have to kind of, like you said, rise above or stand outside of that and like realize that that's something we should talk about as well and bring light
Yeah.
to it, but that we have to understand that not everybody, you're not everybody. We're not, don't gauge your stuff on
Yeah.
judging on how other people do good or how their channels are blowing up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think people like, and I know you're like this too, but I think like we have an interesting like group of people that are always trying to uplift like newer content creators, people who are, like, and there's like a group of us that do that like religiously, where we're constantly boosting, constantly like trying to interact, like, doing whatever we can to like whenever we have the time to do it, and like
Yeah.
really just trying to boost each other up. And it's one of those things that I don't know that all content creating circles have. I tried to do a mom YouTube channel with my best friend a couple years ago now, and the mom community is not nice. And so like nobody wanted to like work with us, like, and these were not like these high profile like content creators that are making money. Like these are people who are on the same like level as us. They got the same sub count, the same interaction level, but it was just such a different feeling. So when I came into the horror community, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but it turned out to be a very like family oriented community where we're like checking on each other, boosting each other, being supportive, like trying to get each other's stuff out there to spread it. And I like, it makes me feel better that we have that a little bit, because it's like, there are other circles I think that don't get that. And then they end up, not driving around doing these awful things, hopefully, but definitely like in these heavy spaces, because they just want someone to like their content.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like something that is very important. And I'm glad that the horror community, like you said, is one big
Yeah.
family that, like I said, we all care about each other and we're all into growing because we want to share our love for horror in terms, even if it's not movies, it could be novels, writing,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, even acting, like people that do acting and they're small
Mhm.
timers. Like it's
Yeah.
always great to support those kind of people.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah. Spree is a wild ride, so to speak.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one that we recommend. And all these films, every film that we talked about today is a
Yeah.
film that I think everybody out there, if you haven't seen it, especially if you're a found footage fan or a horror fan, these are films that you're going to get something out of because they all have something to offer. And thank you so much for joining me and everything and agreeing to come on the channel. It's a
Thanks
lot of
for
fun.
having
I'm
me. Yeah, it
sorry
was
I ignored the chat too, because like this is my first one and I just kind of wanted to focus on like our stuff, you know what I mean, and kind of get like the first
that's
live
okay.
stream.
I replied from my phone.
You reply for, oh, okay, cool. So, yeah, I was like,
To a few
I was
notes. I
nice.
was replying. I've gotten
Cool.
used to doing it, so I'm used to like I'm just used to like trying to do it, and I do it on other people's stuff too. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna comment.
Nice.
Well, but yeah,
Yeah, that's one thing I have to get used to. Like I said, doing the live streams, I'm much better with like just. I mean, even when I do my edited videos that I do for, I don't, write anything down. To I'm like totally unscripted. I just kind of talk. But the live streams is something I have to get used to, like doing this and doing that, kind
it's
of the multitasking.
multitasking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I
But
go like I've been on a channel before where like it's like the most active chat I've ever been like a part of, and I was like, I don't know if I ever get to that level, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know
yeah,
what I'm gonna do. Cause like
you have
oh
to
yeah,
have those
so
people.
yeah, Casey was asking about analog, which I was like thinking, I was like, what does that mean? But she's talking about like content stuff and like yeah, she
Yeah.
said like Deadstream and I think another example of those, even though they're not content creating, is stuff like Unfriended and Host, or they kind
Okay.
of utilize like computer stuff versus, out
Yeah.
in the woods, with a hand cam. But yeah, I don't, the chat thing is when I was still doing video games back when I had a computer that could run and do like record them and what and do all these things. Like people are like, oh, you think you'll ever do Twitch? Nope. You know
Nope.
how many things you have to do when you do Twitch? I get distracted just talking. I can't do video game talk, do chat, post stickers or whatever, and say thank you. I can't do all that. Too much.
Yeah.
I have to like I can't do it.
Sure. Focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we close out, did you want to say what do you have planned for the Voices from Mausoleum? What's coming up on your channel? Any cool videos or any announcements that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so I think my next really big thing that I'm excited about is so this coming Sunday, there will be a Saw video that's released where myself, my co-host Steve, and my friend Kat Valor are going to do our top 3 traps, as well as our Saw rankings, because we're all going to see it this weekend. And so that's kind of, outside of like my normal content that's coming up. And then the only other thing I'm doing under Voices is the anthology that I have that I'm still working on getting out. But That Old House, the Bathroom Part 1 is already out. And I'm working very diligently to get Part 2 out, which is just a horror anthology with a ton of different writers that's about bathroom scenes that are that's like where the whole story takes place. And I got to thinking about things like, Silent Hill, obviously like not just PT, but the older Silent Hills too. 13 Ghosts. There's like bathroom scenes across like The Shining. Like there's so many bathroom scenes in horror, and how just to see like kind of see the creativity people could come up with for that. So that's out. The first one's out now, and then the second one I'm hoping to have finished and ready to go out soon. But otherwise, really excited about the Saw one because I love that franchise so much, and I've just been revisiting all of them. And yeah, I can't wait to talk about Saw this weekend.
Nice. That's going to
Yeah.
be awesome. Sounds very exciting. I
Yeah.
can't wait to check out that content and watch it and everything.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you to everybody who joined in the chat and everything and who dropped comments. And thank you, Angel, for joining, and everybody who hung out with us for Monday to talk found footage horror and all that. It's such a blessing time.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm always down to talk horror, especially found footage.
Yeah. And to everybody out there, hopefully you definitely go sub to Voices from the Mausoleum. If you haven't already, and anybody who watches after the fact, like the video, sub to both of us. We greatly appreciate it and hope you all have a safe, happy evening. Peace out.
Yeah.